It's a Jackalope Carnival! Jackalope Carnival!
Hi, this is Becca.
And this is Eric.
Welcome to Jackalope Carnival. Um, this particular episode, in honor of October, which is the spookiest and best month of the year, we're going to talk about what actually ended up being a two-part episode, communicating with the spirits. And we were both a little too excited to just keep this to one episode because we thought that was some interesting stuff.
So today I'm talking about Ouija board, and you're going to talk about spiritualism as a movement first, and then we'll talk about Ouija board. And then next episode, we're going to get into EVPs.
Yes, absolutely. And the EVP is fascinating stuff. So next time we'll talk about that. But right now, like I said, we're going to talk about contacting the beyond. And Eric, have you ever tried to contact the beyond?
No, I'm not going to do that.
No, absolutely no.
I am not. No. I mean, if a ghost wants to talk to me, that's fine. But I don't think that reaching out indiscriminately into the spirit world is always a good idea.
Okay. From a belief perspective is what I'm
Well,
saying.
yeah, I mean, coming from my perspective, which is one of a believer, sure. Like I believe in spirits. I've seen ghosts. I'm a believer, and I'll come out and tell anybody. I don't care. But
Oh.
yeah, I don't think that I want to just reach out and ask any old spirit, who might be passing by if they want to like come knock on my table and like.
I mean, yeah, you wouldn't do that with just any person. They could be annoying.
They could be annoying. They could, I mean, who's more likely to want to come in your house randomly than?
Yeah, and how do you break up with a spirit friend you're not into anymore?
It's really hard.
Yeah.
Breaking up by Ouija board is hard to do.
So I've definitely used Ouija board. In high school, it was kind of what you did. You tried it out. And I've gone to see a psychic medium. So I've experimented. I don't have a whole lot of belief in it. I've experimented.
In college, right? You experimented
Yeah,
in college?
it was in college. So I did. I talked to a medium. I actually went to see a woman called Betty, who is outside of Hagerstown, Maryland. So she's in a rural area near the outlet, the bread outlet, the bakery outlet. So we went, and my friend had seen her a few times before, I believe, and I wanted to try it out. She sounded really interesting. And so she was so popular in the area that when you got there the night before, you had to sleep out basically on her lawn to be able to see her in the morning.
Does she have neighbors close by?
It's not. It's like outside of Hagerstown, so it's pretty rural. But
So there was no neighbors in sight. Because I'm imagining people being like,
no,
"Wow,
not really.
Betty's got the people lined up on the lawn again."
Not that I recall, but I do remember that we weren't the first people there, and because of this, I didn't get to see her until the afternoon. And my friend saw her before me, and she was only $5, so this lady wasn't in it for the money. She truly believed that she had a gift, and my experience with her was probably a little atypical, but I do know it was nothing like I thought it was going to be. I'm expecting this experience with, crystals and a crystal ball and all of that. And basically I went into this normal woman from Hagerstown's house who, was farsighted. So she asked me to hold out my hands, and she stood on the other side of the room. And then she apologized, but it was lunch and she wanted to get through everybody. So she was going to eat a sandwich. And so she's taking a bite of her sandwich and telling me, about my future. And I thought that was really not the experience of the psychic that I was expecting to get.
Okay, so was she like making predictions about the future or talking to the spirits?
A little of both. So she was a psychic medium, but she used like the palms were her book essentially to read the future.
Got
And
it.
she was guided by the spirits. So she was good. but the experience was, people really liked her, people swore by her, but the experience was nothing like I would have expected.
Eddie the ham sandwich medium.
Yeah. Talking about mediums, that's how we're going to start today, because I think a lot of what I got of what a seance or what seeing a medium would be like comes from the 19th century and the early 20th century in America with the spiritualist movement. This is the first time that we really start to see seances in popular culture and contacting spirits. It becomes pretty normal in a way. It's widely accepted. It starts with two teenage girls, which is not how most religious movements at that time started. It starts in 1848 in Hyattsville,
Unless you're
New
French
York.
and you're trying to expel the English.
And that's a different voices.
Is that another episode?
Yeah.
Fair enough.
So Joan of Arc, in case people didn't catch that one. All right. So Maggie and Kate, like, they hear this knocking on their furniture and they tell their parents, and people start to, hear, and they ask the spirit questions. So they'll say, knock 5 times and the spirits will knock. So they not just hear these knockings, they communicate with the spirits. And eventually they move to Rochester, New York to move in with their sister. And this just happens to be in the right place at the right time, because this is known as the burned over district.
And the burned over district has nothing to do with fires.
No.
Nothing's getting set on fire except for the spirit.
Except for your spirit, yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's a center point for religious reform, essentially. And during that time, we talk about these time periods in American history from the 18th to the 20th century as the Great Awakenings. And so they happen to be in the center of activity for these Great Awakenings. In Great Awakenings, you're like, oh, is this a paranormal? Not really. Great Awakenings are times in U.S. history that spawned a lot of new Christian thought, movements, denominations, and ideas. And in popular culture, you've probably seen this portrayed as tent revivals, fire and brimstone preachers.
And it's kind of interesting because, the way that religion is constructed since the evangelical movement moved beyond its own small insular counterculture in the early 20th century and became a bit more mainstream, there was a real demarcation line between what was considered a cult. This is actually probably in the 60s, which I'll talk about in a second, and what is a cult and what is considered to be like Christian or true religion. And the Ouija board and seances and all that is firmly outside of what is seen as like, acceptable Protestant religion.
Yeah, but not at that time. So at that time, yeah, absolutely. They would kind of say that this goes back with, communicating with things outside oneself. They could tie it to the Bible if they wanted to, and I'm sure they did.
Sure. And Lincoln, of course, I don't know much about Mary Todd Lincoln's religious beliefs, but I know that Abraham Lincoln saw himself very much as a Christian.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, many spiritualists did. They didn't really see that you had to be a spiritualist or a Christian. Like, these were spiritualist ideas that they included in their Christianity for some people. So anyway, we're getting kind of far away, but essentially this Kate and Maggie, they get the show on the road eventually. They are in the right place at the right time. They have this area that's used to all of these new religious ideas and new ways of thinking. And they become the first, arguably, in a line of American mediums that hold seances for well-to-do Americans, fashionable Americans, all hoping to get spiritual guidance or communicate with loved ones. And I think that's really significant because the culture of America had changed so much in the past, 150 years, that women who would have been on trial for witchcraft before were now celebrated at the center of this religious movement that normalizes spirit communication until, as Eric wisely said, until later. We'll get to that part. So
right, but I think you're right. I mean, because it seems, I guess it seems to go in like an ebb and a flow, right? Because the idea of connecting with dead spirits is kind of worldwide, right? I mean,
oh, absolutely.
We think of, the Siberian word shamanism is thrown around quite a bit, but like the idea of being able to connect with the spirit world is something that seems to be perennially human.
And this, becomes normalized in American culture at that time. And as you mentioned before, Mary Todd Lincoln. So it's so normalized that we know that Mary Todd Lincoln has seances in the White House. Later, We know that Thomas Edison has an interview with the Scientific American in 1920. So he's so comfortable talking about this in a scientific magazine that he says that the dead can possibly be contacted with the right device. He says, I've been thinking for some time of a machine or apparatus which could be operated by personalities which have passed on to another existence or sphere. I do claim that it is possible to construct an apparatus which will be so delicate that if there are personalities in another existence or sphere who wish to get in touch with us, they can. He actually says this apparatus will give them a better opportunity to express themselves than the crude methods. And Eric's going to talk about one of those crude methods because I think he's throwing some shade.
I'm always here to talk about the crude methods.
Yeah, Edison's throwing some shade on seances and Ouija boards, but it's hotly debated whether Edison did or did not attempt to make such a device. There's a whole bunch of thought on either side, but we know that it was so normalized.
Chances are he just sort of got another inventor he got Nikola Tesla to invent one and just took credit for it.
Probably, or maybe that one Tesla hid, and so that's why we don't know. But
Tesla's Ouija board would be a great. I would read that.
It's a band name. That's a great band
short
name.
Story, but either one.
Tesla's Ouija board. We are Tesla's Ouija board. All right. So, So not only is it normalized with the invention of the Ouija board and the commercialization, we now have seances going DIY. So Eric's going to talk to us a little bit about Ouija boards.
Right, and what is a poor boy to do if you don't have a medium in town, right?
That's right.
What if you don't have a table that conveniently knocks when you want it? What if you don't have chintzy lace curtains and candles?
And you don't want the mess of ectoplasm.
You don't want ectoplasm. That stuff's impossible to get off of
your curtains.
Your curtains and your furniture. So what do you do if you want to get involved in the spiritualist craze? You want to talk to your dead friends, but you don't have a medium handy. You don't have a Miss Betty in the neighborhood. What do you do? And the answer to that is Baltimore.
It's always Baltimore.
The answer is always Baltimore. So the Ouija board was invented in Baltimore, my beloved Baltimore. But there are things that precede the Ouija board that are somewhat like it. In fact, Charles Kennard, who's considered one of the people who invented the Ouija board, was inspired by a talking board craze that was breaking out in Ohio. So, not terribly far from New York, but people are constructing basically some kind of board that has words or letters on it. And then by some method or another, the board is used to contact spirits. At the time, though, I don't know, I can't find any record that they're using a planchette. And I think that we did some research a bit ago, and we found out planchette means little plank.
Absolutely. That's French for little plank.
The little plank. And a planchette is the part of the Ouija board that you put your fingers on, and it points to things, right? The planchette actually was a separate device at first. And the planchette, at least, I don't know if this is, this could be an instance of things being invented simultaneously in different eras, but there was something like a planchette on wheels being used in China early in the Common Era, where they put like a brush and ink, and it was used for automatic writing.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense with Taoism and the contacting of the spirits within Taoism.
So I don't know if it has a direct connection to the planchette being used in the spiritualist movement of the 19th century in America, because that seems a bit removed. But nevertheless, right? I mean, I think that automatic writing was a thing that is asking the spirits to write through you. But instead, the planchette was paired with the talking board idea from Ohio, and the Ouija board was born. And there's many favorite things I have about Ouija boards, except using them, which I won't do. But one of the great things about the Ouija board is apparently there is some real discrepancy on what the name even means.
Huh.
One of the people who was using the first Ouija board in Baltimore was a woman who had a reputation as being a medium. And she asked the board what they should call it. And the board apparently answered back, Ouija. They asked, what does that mean? And it said, good luck. And so there's a story that Ouija is a Egyptian word for good luck.
No, it's not.
Yeah, right. I mean, basically, whenever like white people in the 19th century say anything is Egyptian, they basically mean like we want it to be exotic.
Well, the Ouija board is rather exotic, though.
It's so exotic. Exotic Baltimore and Ohio. So it doesn't mean good luck. And as a matter of fact, the words we and ja and in French
French
and
and German.
respectively mean yes, yes.
Yes.
And apparently the woman who was in this first seance even had a locket that allegedly had the word Ouija in it. So the Ouija board's, its origin story starts with a potential fiction. It starts with perhaps like this might be all, a gas. It might all be like somebody pulling the wool over your eyes, right? Which is, it seems kind of right. And why do we always end up in this? That seems to be Jackalope Carnival's like home territory, right? The space between like the weird and the possibly like strange edges of reality and the people trying to make stuff up.
Well, that's okay. I think it's the unknown is where we exist, Eric. The unknown.
The unknown. Right. And it's equally the province of the mad person and the truly visionary and the huckster, right? They're all there together, making Ouija boards. And so Charles Kennard gets a business partner, the guy by the name of William Fold, and they open up a Ouija board factory in Baltimore, as one does. Yeah. And they make a lot of money, actually. It's very successful. And as a matter of fact, you can go to the place where the Ouija board was first invented in Baltimore and visit the historical marker. It's a historical plaque, and it actually kind of looks like a Ouija board. Now, here's the punchline. It's catty corner from the Walters Art Museum on Charles Street. So if you come to Baltimore and you're in the Inner Harbor, it's kind of like the tourist hub of Baltimore. Come north on Charles, the way that Charles goes. Don't drive south on Charles. It's a bad idea. But if you're coming north on Charles, right before you get to, I guess, Center Street, I'm guessing, you'll see, or you'll go past before Monument Street. Shoot, it's escaping me right now. But
they'll Google. Don't you worry.
Google it. Yeah. But there's a 7-Eleven. That's the best part. So you park, you go in the 7-Eleven, and you go in the door, and you turn immediately to the right. And right there, stacked up next to the sodas and the Slim Jims, is the historical marker telling you that the Ouija board was first made in this building, which is now a 7-Eleven. And as a matter of fact, in 2015, the Ouija Con, which was meeting in Baltimore, I didn't know that was, it really is. I had no idea. The Ouija Con applied to the local government and got a official Ouija board day. The wonderful thing about this is they got the mayor of Baltimore to read an official proclamation about Ouija board day. And this is only, it's wonderful on many levels, but one of the levels is the mayor at the time is actually a woman that I have a lot of respect for. I think that she did the best she could being the executive of Baltimore City. And she was known as a very straight to the point, no nonsense type of person, which, to be honest, isn't that what you want, out of someone who's, in politics. So she's this super serious person, and she's reading a proclamation about Ouija Day in Baltimore. Seek it out. The listening to her do it is wonderful. But as a politician, as a human being, she has nothing but my respect. But her reading Ouija Day proclamation is just fantastic. So the Ouija board in Baltimore actually made Kennard and Flood a ton of money, to the point where they kept moving and expanding, building bigger factories. But the Ouija board would be the death of William Fold. William Fold would become the sole owner after the 1890s, but he would have an untimely death. Apparently, he was on the roof of his Baltimore factory adjusting a flagpole when he fell off the roof to his death. Yeah, and I don't know if anyone at work ever tried to contact him after that. It seems like a no-brainer, really.
They probably did. I'm just ashamed no one warned him. None of the spirits of the Ouija warned him about this.
Well, who's to know that spirits have, any knowledge of the future? Who knows? I don't know. I'm just saying, like, if you die at a Ouija board factory, they just don't leave you alone. They're probably just everyone's trying to get a hold of you.
He's really the only spirit that comes through on Ouija boards now.
Right. It's like it's the worst version of getting emailed when you're homesick. You know what I mean? Like you're sick, you're at home, you don't feel good, and everybody keeps emailing you like, hey, where's this? Hey, where's that? It's like that, but you're dead, right? You fell off the roof and people are like, they got Ouija boards. They're like, hey, William, by the way, like we can't find like this file. Where'd you put it?
So who took up for after he died?
His family did. It was a family business, but eventually they sold it to Parker Brothers in 1966.
Okay.
That's the same year that the Mothman was first sighted.
Oh, but it all comes back to the Mothman.
Always. And do you think this is coincidence?
No.
No. So here's the best part though. Guess where Parker Brothers Ouija factory was? You'll never guess. I'll give you three chances to guess this.
Oh, don't make me guess. We'll let our listeners guess this one. So give them
okay.
a
So ready?
second.
First guess. No, but close. Second guess. No, the answer is Salem, Massachusetts.
That makes sense though. Yeah.
So Ouija actually starts being made in Salem. And again, you mentioned that like once upon a time, that would have had a different outcome.
Yeah, definitely. The irony. So that is quite interesting. And I like that it has a history that's so tied to America and it's American made. That's pretty great. Are they still? Probably not.
Are they still made in Salem?
Made in America.
I don't know that for sure. And yeah, it seems we don't do a lot of manufacturing in America anymore. So if we did, it'd be surprising. Although Parker Brothers is still making Ouija boards, but they really do. They're walking a line, right? Because on one hand, they have this product that sells pretty well. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, and do we want to talk about this now? There was a bit of a backlash.
I mean, we can, yeah.
Okay. So in the 1960s, when the counterculture was kind of taking off, there were a lot of folks looking, I guess what we think of as like atypical religious movements or things kind of outside of like the Protestant mainstream of America. And you had people in, children of middle America looking to Eastern mysticism and new religious movements, and even looking into some of the spiritualist movement from the past. And indeed, people were getting involved once again in seances and in Ouija boards. And there was a real backlash against this amongst Protestant Christianity. And a lot of things that, back in the 19th century weren't necessarily seen as anti-Christian, it suddenly became so. And so all of this, right, got kind of thrown into the occult bin, like everything from meditation to, Eastern mysticism, to Ouija boards, to spiritualism, all got kind of thrown into like a big bin called occult. And there was a giant backlash against it. And there was a lot of churches preaching against using like occult things like the Ouija board. And it really kind of comes to a head. I don't know if it comes to a head, but there was a very famous movie that happened. Oh, before we get to the Satanic Panic of the 80s, but that's.
We are not getting there today. Yeah, we were not getting to that.
No. That's, or if ever. But the Exorcist happens, right? So The Exorcist is a book that was written about a very famous case of demonic possession. It was based on a real case. There's a lot of debate on how fictionalized it was. The gender of the possessed child was changed as well as the name, but it
gets made into that movie that was wildly popular.
Right. The movie came out in 1973 and it was tremendously popular and became kind of a cultural force. And one of the plot points of the movie is that the girl who is possessed after using a Ouija board. And that enters kind of like the zeitgeist, and people start thinking that Ouija boards are a portal to something dangerous, which is funny because that totally isn't how they were marketed at first. That isn't how spiritualism was marketed, right? Or I guess marketed is the wrong word, but like in the 19th century, spiritualism was a way to talk to loved ones. It was a way to reunite with people you loved. It wasn't seen as something that was dangerous or could result in some kind of harm, right? But like by the time we get to the 20th century, and again, we see that the American idea of death has changed. Death is more scary now, and these religious practices are scary now. And now we have this famous movie where it shows a Ouija board being used and something bad happening. And so, yeah, the tide turns against spiritualism and Ouija. And
Somewhat. I mean, I think because we're going to talk about that next. This is when EVP really starts to become popular, though. So in some ways, yeah, but in other ways, we're going to find out no.
right. I guess
I mean,
maybe part of its appeal is the fact that it's also kind of dangerous, right?
Well, maybe. There's interesting. I think the science was the appeal, but it's interesting because I wonder where we are today with this. And I think we're probably, I mean, I haven't really heard about the Ouija board for a while, but I have to wonder if we're not coming out of it again, if we're not going into another period where that's okay.
Well, let me just say one more thing about the Ouija board. And that is, and I was reading about this, Parker Brothers is walking a line where they don't want to activate anyone who might think that Ouija boards are like part of this dangerous or scary spiritual practice. So they kind of keep it on the DL, like we still make it. You can still buy it at, Walmart.
But we're not advertising.
But we're not advertising it.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't know if Walmart carries it, but I think Target does.
So yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Well, this was really interesting. I learned a lot about Ouija boards and I'm going to have to go see one in Baltimore. I didn't know that. And I've been to Baltimore many, many times without going to the 7-Eleven there.
Well, now you know.
I know. So, I mean, what do you think about all this? Well, that's up to you. This is pretty much our show for today. So thanks for joining us. And I hope we'll see you all next episode when we talk about electronic voice phenomenon. Thank you.
Jackalope Carnival!